Welcome back to the Business Buzz, everyone.
Glad to be here.
This week, we're diving into some pretty serious market turmoil.
Definitely.
And it's, all thanks to President Trump's surprise tariff announcements. We're talking 25% on goods from Mexico and Canada,
Wow.
10% on China, and even a 10% hit on Canadian energy.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, yeah. It's safe to say investors are a little spooked.
Yeah, I think spooked is an understatement. It's definitely a bold move with potential ramifications that extend far beyond just the immediate economic impact.
And that's what we're here to untangle. It's this surprising connection between these tariffs and the world of Bitcoin.
Right.
Some analysts are predicting a major crash, while others are calling for a violent surge.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So have you been following this story? What are your thoughts on how Bitcoin will weather this storm?
Well, it's definitely a story that's got everyone talking. I think it's fascinating how a single policy decision can send such shockwaves through the markets. Right.
And create such wildly different predictions.
Okay, let's break down these trade wars a little further. So Trump just drops this bombshell, slapping tariffs on what seems like everything.
Yeah.
And investors are scrambling. We're seeing this risk-off sentiment take hold.
Right.
What exactly does that mean for someone like me who's just, trying to understand the bigger picture?
Well, essentially, a risk-off environment means investors are moving away from assets that are perceived as risky and seeking safer havens.
Okay.
And the initial reaction, well, Bitcoin took a hit. We saw a drop of over 13%.
Wow.
Even dipping below $92,000 on Binance over the weekend.
Okay, so that's a significant drop. Now, I know we have listeners who live and breathe finance, but for those of us who don't, could you kind of explain these specific tariffs and their potential consequences? I'm especially curious about the potential long-term implications.
Yeah, you're right. It's important to look beyond the surface. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill tariffs.
We're seeing a mix of ad valorem tariffs, which are a percentage of the value of the goods, and specific tariffs, which are a fixed amount per unit.
All right.
Each one impacts different sectors in unique ways, creating a complex web of consequences.
Interesting. So it's not as simple as just saying tariffs are bad or tariffs are good.
Exactly. The historical precedents are varied.
Sure.
Sometimes tariffs can lead to a renegotiation and a more balanced trade relationship.
Right.
Other times they ignite retaliatory measures and escalate into full-blown trade wars with unforeseen consequences.
Okay. So the jury's still out on the long-term outcome.
Right.
And right in the middle of all this, we have Bitcoin trying to figure out where it fits in.
Indeed. And that's where the analyst opinions get really interesting.
Right. You have Alex Kruger, who sees Bitcoin as this risky asset that takes a hit when things get shaky. But then there's Jeff Park from Bitwise, who's arguing that these very tariffs could actually benefit Bitcoin in the long run. How can two experts look at the same event and come to such, opposing conclusions?
Well, let's unpack their reasoning.
Okay.
Kruger highlights Bitcoin's historical correlation with equity markets. When uncertainty hits, investors tend to liquidate riskier assets, like stocks, and as we've seen, Bitcoin. He's even suggesting a further drop, potentially to $80,000, if key support levels break.
That's a pretty bearish outlook. But is there any historical data to support such a steep drop? Has Bitcoin ever reacted this dramatically to global events in the past?
It's true that Bitcoin has shown resilience during previous economic downturns.
Right.
However, the situation is unique because of the scale and scope of these tariffs and the potential for a prolonged trade war.
Okay, I see your point. So while history can offer some guidance, this situation might be charting new territory. Now let's look at the other side of the coin, the violent surge argument.
Right. Park's perspective is rooted in the belief that these tariffs are a calculated move by the Trump administration to weaken the U.S. dollar and renegotiate global trade agreements.
Okay.
He sees this as a catalyst for a major shift towards alternative assets, with Bitcoin leading the charge.
And his prediction is based on more than just a hunch, right?
Yeah.
He has specific reasons for believing Bitcoin will benefit from a weaker dollar and trade instability.
Yes, absolutely. Park argues that a weaker dollar makes Bitcoin more attractive as a as a store of value,
Yeah.
especially for international investors looking for a hedge against currency devaluation.
Okay.
Additionally, trade wars often lead to capital flight as investors seek safe havens outside of the affected country. This can drive investment into assets like Bitcoin, which operate independently of traditional financial systems.
So Park is essentially saying that that the very factors that are spooking traditional markets could actually be a boon for Bitcoin.
Precisely. And to illustrate his conviction, he even said, and I quote, "You simply have not yet grasped how amazing a sustained tariff war is going to be for Bitcoin in the long run."
That's quite a bold statement. It seems like he's betting big on a major paradigm shift in the global financial landscape.
He is indeed. He believes this situation will expose the vulnerabilities of the current system and accelerate the adoption of decentralized alternatives like Bitcoin.
So we have two contrasting perspectives.
No?
One rooted in historical correlation and potential market panic.
Right.
The other focused on a potential paradigm shift and a flight to alternative assets. It seems like a lot hinges on how this trade war plays out and how governments and institutions react.
You've hit the nail on the head. The next few months will be crucial in determining which of these scenarios unfolds.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners who are invested in Bitcoin or considering, dipping their toes into the crypto waters?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Well, let's dig into that a bit further after a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore the potential implications for both sides of the argument and discuss what you can do to navigate this uncertain terrain.
It's important to remember that while Bitcoin is, grabbing the headlines, these trade tensions have implications far beyond just the crypto market.
Right, we're talking about a global issue with the potential to ripple across, all sorts of assets and industries. So where do we go from here? What are the potential scenarios that could unfold?
Well, let's start with the optimistic scenario.
Okay.
We could see a relatively quick resolution.
Yeah.
All parties come back to the negotiating table, cooler heads prevail, and they hammer out a new trade agreement.
Right.
This would likely lead to a market rebound, a collective sigh of relief, and maybe even a boost for Bitcoin as confidence returns.
Okay, so that's the everyone wins scenario. What about the flip side? What happens if things escalate?
If things escalate, we could be looking at a tit-for-tat trade war.
Right.
China, Mexico, and Canada retaliate with their own tariffs, and suddenly we're in a spiral of protectionist measures that could seriously damage the global economy.
That sounds like a recipe for economic disaster. What would that mean for Bitcoin? Would it be seen as a safe haven, or get swept up in the turmoil?
That's a tough question. On the one hand, Bitcoin's decentralized nature and limited supply could make it attractive as a hedge against economic instability.
Right.
But on the other hand, if we see a global recession, even Bitcoin could struggle to maintain its value.
So a lot of uncertainty hangs in the balance. For our listeners who are trying to make sense of all this, what are the key indicators they should be watching? What signals might point towards one scenario or the other?
Well, first and foremost, keep a close eye on any official statements or announcements from the governments involved.
Got it.
Look for signs of progress in negotiations. Or conversely, any escalation of rhetoric or actions.
So stay glued to the news cycle.
Essentially, yes, but it's not just about political posturing.
Right.
Pay close attention to economic data releases,
Okay.
particularly those related to inflation and economic growth.
Because if inflation starts running wild, it could force the Federal Reserve's hand.
Yep. Exactly. If inflation spikes, the Fed might have to, raise interest rates more aggressively than anticipated.
Right.
And that could create headwinds for risk assets, including Bitcoin.
Okay.
As investors seek the relative safety of higher yielding bonds.
Okay, that makes sense. So watching those economic indicators can give us some insight into the Fed's likely course of action and how that might ripple through the markets.
Precisely. It's about connecting the dots and understanding the potential chain reactions.
It sounds like a lot of wait and see at this point with a healthy dose of vigilance.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
It's a time for caution and careful observation. Avoid making any rash decisions based on fear or speculation. This isn't the time to panic sell or chase quick profits.
This whole situation reminds me of the early days of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
All that uncertainty, the wild market swings, everyone trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. There are definitely parallels. We're dealing with a major global event with potentially far-reaching economic consequences.
Right.
And just like during the pandemic, we're seeing Bitcoin react dramatically to these events, with its price reflecting both the fears and hopes of investors.
It seems like we're living in an era of heightened volatility and uncertainty. Is this the new normal? Should we expect more of these types of global shocks in the future?
It's certainly possible. Globalization has interconnected our economies in unprecedented ways,
What?
which means that events in one part of the world can quickly cascade across borders. This interconnectedness can create opportunities,
Right.
but it also makes us more vulnerable to shocks and disruptions.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
We benefit from the interconnectedness, but we also have to be prepared for the downsides.
Exactly, and I think that's a key takeaway for anyone operating in today's globalized world. We need to be adaptable, informed, and resilient.
Speaking of adaptability, let's bring this back to our listeners.
Okay.
What can they do to protect their investments, whether they're in Bitcoin or other assets,
Right.
in this type of environment?
First and foremost, don't panic. Emotional
Okay.
decision-making is rarely beneficial, especially when it comes to investing.
Right.
Take a deep breath, step back, and assess the situation rationally.
That's easier said than done when your portfolio is flashing red and everyone around you seems to be losing their heads.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to remember your long-term investment strategy. If you believe in the fundamentals of the assets you're invested in,
Right.
then this short-term volatility shouldn't derail your overall plan.
So stay the course. Don't let the market swings dictate your actions.
Exactly. Review your portfolio.
Okay.
Make sure it aligns with your risk tolerance, and if necessary, rebalance to ensure you're not overexposed to any single asset class.
Diversification is key, right?
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure, don't hesitate to seek advice from a qualified financial advisor. A second opinion can be incredibly valuable, especially during times of uncertainty.
That's great advice. So to sum it up, stay informed, manage your risk, and don't panic.
That's an excellent summary. And remember, this is a dynamic situation. Yeah. Things can change rapidly, so stay flexible and be prepared to adjust your approach as needed.
It sounds like agility and adaptability are essential skills for navigating the current financial landscape.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We're living in a time of rapid change,
Right.
and those who can adapt quickly will be best positioned to thrive.
So we've talked about the potential scenarios, the key indicators to watch, and some practical advice for our listeners. But before we move on, I wanted, from something you mentioned earlier, the potential for a paradigm shift in the global financial system.
Yes, that's a fascinating aspect of this whole situation. Could these trade tensions
Right.
and the resulting economic uncertainty accelerate the adoption of decentralized alternatives like Bitcoin?
That's a question I'm sure many of our listeners are pondering. It really really makes you think about how fragile the current system is. Could this be the push that finally moves Bitcoin from the fringes to the mainstream?
It's certainly possible. We've already seen investors turn to Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation,
Right.
especially in countries with volatile currencies. If these trade wars continue
Uh-huh.
and global instability increases,
Right.
that trend could gain even more momentum.
And it's not just about individuals seeking a safe haven, right? We
Yeah.
could see governments and even central banks exploring the potential of digital currencies as a way to work around traditional financial systems and maybe even circumvent sanctions.
That's a fascinating development to watch.
Yeah.
Some countries are already experimenting with central bank digital currencies or CBDCs.
ZBZs. Okay.
It's not hard to imagine a future where these digital currencies play a much larger role in international trade and finance.
That's a whole other level.
Hmm.
So Bitcoin could go from this fringe asset to a major player on the global stage.
Hmm.
But wouldn't that kind of attention also bring more scrutiny and regulation?
Absolutely. Governments are unlikely to just, sit back and watch as a decentralized system potentially disrupts the existing power structures. We
Right.
could see, tighter regulations on cryptocurrency exchanges, stricter KYC and AML requirements, and even attempts to, control the flow of digital assets across borders.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Mm.
More adoption could bring more legitimacy,
Right.
but also more restrictions.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if Bitcoin can truly remain decentralized if it becomes too big to
Yeah.
ignore.
That's a question that's at the heart of the debate over Bitcoin's future. Can it scale and achieve mainstream adoption without compromising its core principles of decentralization and censorship resistance?
I guess only time will tell.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating and uncertain time for the world of finance.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, what are the key takeaways our listeners should remember as they navigate this this complex landscape?
I think the most important takeaway is to stay informed.
Okay.
This is a rapidly evolving situation with a lot of moving parts.
Uh-huh.
Pay attention to the news, economic data, and developments in the crypto space.
Yeah.
Don't rely on hype or speculation, but instead seek out credible sources of information.
And don't panic, right? Even in the face of uncertainty, it's important to stick to your long-term investment strategy.
Sure.
And make decisions based on careful consideration, not fear.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't just about Bitcoin. These trade tensions have the potential to reshape the entire global financial system.
Yeah.
The choices we make now as individuals, as investors, and as a society will have a lasting impact on the future of finance.
Some pretty profound stuff to think about.
Yeah.
So to all our Business Buzz listeners out there, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those brains buzzing. The future of finance is being written right now, and it's up to all of us to shape it.
Well said. Until next time, everyone.
And as we always say here on the Business Buzz, stay sharp, stay savvy, and we'll see you next time.